Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you live in this crazy world of ours. Now, what I'm going to talk about in this video is an incredible miscarriage of justice that has just been, well, I don't know how to call it. It's a miscarriage of justice that has just been rescinded, if you like, or just been resolved. But the years that the man who was accused of murdering this girl in Birkenhead many, many years ago, he served all those days in prison. This is the guy, Peter Sullivan, was seen in the area, confessed to the crime, but then rescinded his confession. And all these years he's sat in prison, and he is now, because of DNA, been cleared of the terrible offence he was charged with. You know, I'm sort of a little bit speechless about it all, because how can they give this man his life back? And of course, at the time, we did not have the advancements in DNA that we have now. So probably at the time, if DNA would have been around, he would never have been charged. He would never have been found guilty. Well, unfortunately, he was, and he's now been cleared by DNA. So we're going to have a look at this case. So first of all, just want to say a quick thank you to everybody for watching, for liking, for subscribing, for being members. For PayPals, Ko-fis, nice emails, nice messages. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. So what happened in this case? Well, we're going to look at a couple of short videos, news videos that will give us the background to this case. Why has it taken so long to exonerate Peter? If all these years he's been battling to be free, why has it taken so long? And why was he actually found guilty in the first place? Now, miscarriages of justice, they are rare. I do believe they are rare, and I think especially these days, it takes so much to get someone to court. Once it's been decided that, once the Crown Prosecutor, as far as the UK is concerned, or whoever it is in whichever country it happens, I think once they decide that, yes, there is enough evidence to go to trial, it's likely to produce a guilty verdict, just because of the fact otherwise the evidence wouldn't be, it would never go to trial in the first place. And of course, the advent of DNA testing has made it even more certain, hasn't it? If somebody is found guilty on the basis of DNA evidence, DNA testing, really, it's unlikely that that will ever be held as a miscarriage of justice, isn't it? But these convictions from many years ago are a whole different ballgame, aren't they? So now DNA can exonerate people. There'll be people out there that think they've got away with a crime that they never know now when the knock on the door is going to come. And what's also worrying in this case is, if Peter didn't do it, who did it? Have they been walking around free all this time? Maybe they've done other things, or wouldn't their DNA have been matched up if they would have committed other crimes? Or maybe, as quite often happens, people commit one crime and then they just go off and lead a normal life. The perpetrator will be, not young now. Have they had a family? Maybe they've got children. Maybe they've got grandchildren. Who killed this girl? So I think that's a massive thing as well. Anyway, let's just have a look at, first of all, we're going to look at this news report. This is BBC, I think. Very interesting and tragic for him and his family. But do you know what? He's out there saying he's not angry. Well, I'd be absolutely livid if it was me. So that's very magnanimous of him. I hope he gets compensation.
From here in London on the longest running miscarriage of justice affecting a living prisoner in UK history. A man who spent more than 37 years in jail for one of the most notorious murders of the 1980s has been freed by the Court of Appeal.
37 years in jail, Peter has served. And he was labelled the Beast of Birkenhead. You know, you can imagine what that must have been like, not only for him, but for his family, who had to live sort of knowing that, or in their eyes, he was innocent. But, you know, people won't have been nice to the family, will they? They'll have called them names, you know, talked about their brother or their family member. Just awful for everybody.
After new DNA evidence showed he wasn't the killer. Peter Sullivan was jailed in 1987 for the sex attack and murder of 21-year-old bride-to-be Diane Sindall, who was killed as she walked home in Birkenhead in 1986.
So 1986, poor Diane apparently ran out of petrol in her car and, you know, then was found murdered in an alleyway. And she had also been, you know, RAPD'd. So it's a terrible, horrible, horrible crime. And you know, this is as much as I am so happy for Peter that he's been released. But where is the person who did this? Where are they? You know, if you live in Birkenhead area, could be your neighbour.
So let's take you live to the Court of Appeal in central London. We can join our correspondent there, Tom Simons, who's been following the case. Tom, tell us about that historic and quite remarkable movement in court.
Well, Peter Sullivan wasn't in court. He was in prison, where he's been for 38 years, actually, if you include the time he spent before being charged and convicted of this terrible crime. He was at Wakefield Prison listening down a video link. There were a couple of hours of submissions to the very senior judges here about his case, primarily about the DNA evidence, which has changed everything, which has proven that there was DNA evidence found on Diane Sindall's body, and it is proven not to be his. We don't know whose it is, but it's not his. And when
whose is it? You know, this is really I would imagine what's happening is the police are investigating again. Then, you know, I don't know what they're doing. The DNA that was found on Diane's body can't be in the database, can it? Because they would have arrested somebody by now. How scary. 37 or 38 years, as this guy says, in total for something you did not do.
And he heard that the judges had decided that that meant that his conviction could be quashed. He was in tears. He put his head on the table in front of him, and his supporters in the public gallery were also in tears. And we've heard some of them reacting outside court here the last few minutes. But to give you the background to this case, which has gone on for so long, this is our legal affairs correspondent, Dominic Casciani.
Almost 38 years in jail, now told he is an innocent man. This is Peter Sullivan, jailed in 1987 for one of the most shocking crimes of that decade. He was convicted of murdering 21-year-old Diane Sindall in Birkenhead on the Wirral.
There's always a dog, isn't there? You know, when you see these photos, I've often thought this, it doesn't matter which country the crime is that I'm looking into, either the victim or the perpetrator, or sometimes both. There's always a little dog there somewhere, and I, you know, I always spare a thought for the dog. You know, what did they think when their owner didn't come back, or, you know, because whatever you think, you know, dogs, they do get used to people and miss their owners, etc. So yeah, love it. So poor Diane. So she was cheated. It's ironic, isn't it? She was cheated of her life. I think she was 21 at the time. So her life was stolen from her. But also the real perpetrator has stolen Peter's life. So really he's taken two lives, hasn't he? You know, taken two lives. I hope they find him. I bet he's getting worried now. I bet whoever it is, if he's still alive, I mean, there's no reason why he shouldn't be still alive, because he won't be that old by now. But if he, he'd be panicking. He will be panicking, of course.
Miss Sindall was a much-loved florist and bartender, saving up for her coming marriage.
Oh.
Late at night in August 1986, her van ran out of petrol on the way home. And as she walked in the dark, her killer struck here on one of the town's main roads.
Diane was killed sometime around midnight on Friday, August the 1st, on Borough Road in Birkenhead.
So desperate were the police for leads, they went nationwide, telling the BBC.
Yeah, so this is Crime Watch, which is a British programme. I think it's still on, where, they highlight, I think it's once a month, highlight certain crimes to see if they can attract witnesses or information. Of course, don't forget, we're going back nearly 40 years. So there was no CCTV, no mobile phones. Poor Diane, she was walking there, to phone anybody, she would have had to go to a telephone box. And she probably was walking down a main road because she probably thought she was safe on a main road, but she wasn't. And so Birkenhead, just for anybody who doesn't know, it's near Liverpool. Most people, whether you're from the UK or not, know about Liverpool because of the Beatles. But it's sort of in the north of England. Liverpool is, as I say, very well known for its football team as well, of course. Just won the league this year. So, Liverpool is probably quite well known, and Birkenhead is like a suburb, would you call it, of Liverpool, or just outside Liverpool. So this diagram is showing how she was walking.
Crime Watch, they had no idea who the killer was.
We haven't got any sightings whatsoever of Diane walking back along Borough Road towards the town centre.
Nobody saw who snatched Diane Sindall off this busy road and go on to murder her in this alleyway. And it took the police weeks to conclude that Peter Sullivan was their prime suspect. 37 years on, that conviction was thrown into doubt by evidence that had been gathered from the crime scene. New DNA testing pointed to another man. Peter Sullivan's trial heard he'd been spotted at this beauty spot where some of the victims' belongings were set alight. Sullivan admitted the killing to the police, but then retracted his confession.
Yeah, so he did admit or confess to the killing, but later he said that a lot of people say it, don't they? They confess under duress, they just want it all to be over with. There's many different reasons why people make false confessions. Or sometimes, they confess because they did do it, and then later maybe their lawyer tells them to retract it. And, you could have thought that in this case, but of course it's the DNA evidence. Once the DNA evidence was proven not to be his, really, there's nowhere else to go with it, is there?
4 decades on, the DNA profile that's overturned Peter Sullivan's conviction was obtained by the Criminal Cases Review Commission. In 2021, he asked it for help, and it forensically examined evidence taken from the victim, something it had refused to do 16 years ago. It acted this time after being warned it had missed a similar DNA opportunity in the case of Andy Malkinson, later exonerated of rape. This result means Diane Sindall's real killer got away with it. The unknown attacker was free, while Peter Sullivan enjoyed.
Now look at Diane's tombstone, murdered the 2nd of August, I think that is, isn't it? 1986, because she was a woman. In memory of all our sisters who have been RAPD'd and murdered. You will never be forgotten. That's a very emotive headstone.
Endured one of the worst miscarriages of justice in British legal history. Dominic Hashani, BBC News.
Now, we have been hearing some responses from those involved with Peter Sullivan's case over the years. In particular, his lawyer, Sarah Myatt, who gave us a statement earlier, read his words, Mr. Sullivan's words. He said, "I am not angry, I am not bitter." He said he was just anxious to return to his loved ones and, as he put it, repair what he could from the driftwood, which is my life. Those are his words.
Gosh, not angry, not bitter. I'm angry for him, but he's probably, I don't know, just exhausted by it all. Maybe the anger will come later when he starts to feel better and, think more about what he's lost. I hope he gets compensation. That'll be the only positive thing that might come out of it. He deserves compensation.
As Peter Sullivan's after hearing of his conviction being quashed. And also we heard from Kim Smith, his sister, who perhaps unexpectedly came to the microphone and gave us this.
We've lost Peter for 39 years, and at the end of the day, it's not just us. We haven't won, Peter hasn't won, and neither is the Sindall family. They've lost their daughter, they're not going to get her back. We've got Peter back, and now we've got to try and build a life around him again. So at the end...
Yeah, now, what about the Sindall family? What about Diane's family? Imagine that. You think that the perpetrator, it's cold comfort, isn't it, to know that the person that's murdered your sister, daughter, auntie, cousin, whatever, friend, that at least the person who's done it has been, charged, found guilty, and is in prison. Now they're finding out that all this time, the perpetrator, the real perpetrator, is out there. They might even know them or have come into contact with them. If they all live in the same local area, which is likely, it's not likely to be someone from outside the area. In Birkenhead, I don't know how they're assimilating all this. I mean, at least, for this family, the Sullivan family, they have got their brother back. Might have lost him for 30 odd years, but they've got him back now, and they can, at least, and even when he was in prison, at least he was there that they could talk to him. And, whereas the Sindall family, they lost Diane forever. I can't talk to her, can't visit her, except at the gravestone. So this will be, I know it's euphoric for this family, but this will be a very difficult day for the Sindall family.
End of the day, we feel sorry for the Sindalls, and it's such a shame that all this has had to happen in the first place. So, but that's it now. Ecstatic. It shouldn't have happened in the first place, and now it's out in the open. Everybody knows about it now, and let's hope people will start respecting all our wishes now and understand that Peter was called so many different names, and that all needs to be squashed now, because Peter was never anything of what he's being called in the first place. So thank you very much.
Kim Smith, the sister of Peter Sullivan, giving her response just now. Now, it's the nature of these miscarriage of justice cases that one question is answered, but that opens lots of other questions. Firstly, who killed Diane Sindall on that night in 1986? A really bad day for her parents in many ways. They now don't know the answer to that question. The second question is, what are we doing the right thing for people who feel that they have miscarriages of justice in their cases? This case will, I think, lead to further questions following that of Andrew Malkinson in 2023, who saw his rape conviction quashed, about whether the bar is simply too high in the system that we have at the moment for people to convince a court and to convince the authorities that their case should get another hearing at the Royal Courts of Justice at the Appeal Court here. There is a review going on, and I suspect that this case will be among those that review is considering.
Yeah, so, it'd be an important thing for other people who are fighting against, incorrect convictions. I think the DNA has got to be a game changer, hasn't it? So I understand you can't retry every case, because there's not many people, even after they're convicted, will say, oh, yeah, I did it. People do go on to do, that's the right of people in Britain, to appeal convictions, and they're going to do that. So I don't think they can retry every single case, can they? Because it'd just be too much. But cases like this, to me, it just seems a no-brainer that if there's DNA evidence, the new DNA evidence warrants this, means that there should be a new trial. What do you think? Let me know what you think in comments. But I think I've got one more little news thing. I saw, Channel 4 News.
Our next reconstruction is the tragic death of Diane Sindall in Merseyside.
So shocking was Diane Sindall's rape and murder in 1986 that it made BBC's flagship Crime Watch programme.
Hi, are you okay?
But the man they eventually convicted, dubbed at the time as the Beast of Birkenhead, has been fighting since to prove his innocence. Today, Peter Sullivan, who has spent the last 38 years in prison, took his case to the Court of Appeal for the third time, armed with new DNA evidence that he hoped would prove it wasn't him.
In the light of that fresh evidence, we quash the conviction. As we have noted, the respondent very properly does not seek a retrial.
Gosh, that's monumental, isn't it? So this judge quashed the conviction, no need even for a retrial. You cannot argue with DNA evidence, can you?
The appellant must therefore be released from custody.
In court, his family looked longingly at the video link of him from Wakefield Prison before beginning to cry through smiles. So sure were they that this time they had the evidence to prove that he was innocent. And when the news was delivered that Peter Sullivan was finally going to become a free man, he broke down in tears, as did his family, who mouthed, "We've done it." And how did you feel when you heard the words that he...
Oh, look, we melted. As soon as you said, it's quashed. You're a free man. We all broke down. Peter broke down. And just say that. Come on. You're going to kick me off.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's the emotion of it, and to see that. We're happy. To the sense that he's coming home. That's what it is, lovely.
At the end of the day, it's not just us. We haven't won. Peter hasn't won, and neither is the Sindall family. They've lost their daughter. They're not going to get her back. We've got Peter back, and now we've got to try and build a life around him again. So at the end of the day, we feel sorry for the Sindalls, and it's such a shame.
How do you ever begin to start rebuilding your life after almost 4 decades in prison?
It's a tough one. He's got to come out. He's got to... We still have telephone boxes in the street. We don't have them anymore. It's all mobile phones. He doesn't have them now, does he?
Can you imagine coming out of prison after nearly 40 years? How different life is, society is, the UK. You might be wanting to go back into prison after you see the state of the UK now. But do you know what I mean? It's like so much has changed. It literally will be a foreign life to him. It'll be a life that he doesn't understand. It'll be a Birkenhead that he doesn't remember. They're just cars. Everything is different, isn't it? But anyway, at least he's coming out. I think it'd be difficult to just, I would imagine, he will be given, I hope so. I mean, I don't know how it happens what happens when someone's released from prison, especially on after having a conviction quashed. Will he have counsellors? Will he be given, I don't know, benefits? Will he get a job? I mean, what will he immediately sue for compensation? There's so many unknowns. At the moment, they're just concentrating on the positivity that he is being released from prison. But, it won't be without its challenges for him and the family. But, my heart does go out to Diane's family, because it must be pretty disastrous for them, to be honest. It just must be horrible.
He's got an awful lot that he's got to learn. There's the rehabilitation side to it. It's coming back out in society. He's got to learn to live.
The appeal was brought by the Criminal Cases Review Commission after new technology revealed DNA taken from semen found on Diane Sindall's body was not a match with Peter Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan is described by experts as a suggestible man with limited intellectual capacity, who made and then withdrew multiple confessions at the time without legal advice. An expert dentist also criticised...
Oh, that's right as well. I remember reading. So he had no legal advice at the time, despite having asked for a solicitor. You know, now once someone asks for a solicitor, well, and it was supposed to be the fact then, but, you know, it didn't often happen. But as soon as someone lawyers up, you know, requests a solicitor, that's it. You know, the police have to stop interviewing that person until the solicitor arrives. But this is not what happened with Peter. And all these confessions that he made were without legal representation present. You know, it was a whole different world. You know, as far as legal things were concerned, the police are much more highly scrutinised now than they were then, aren't they? Yeah, it's a tragedy, isn't it? So he confessed on multiple occasions, but without legal advice there. And like they were just saying, they supposedly, you know, don't want to insult him, but supposedly, you know, a man of low intellect, you know, it'd be easy. There are some people that would be easily browbeaten by the police. You know, this doesn't even matter about their intellect. It matters about their personality. You know, some people are much more easily suggestible, aren't they, than others. And it sounds like Peter was one of these people.
There's evidence which linked bite marks to his teeth. Yes. Outside court, Peter's solicitor read a statement from him.
I am not angry. I am not bitter. I am simply anxious to return to my loved ones and family, as I've got to make the most of what is left of the existence I am granted in this world.
Oh. Peter Sullivan now has the unenviable title as the victim of the longest miscarriage of justice for a serving prisoner in British history. Merseyside police say they reopened their investigation in 2023 when the new DNA was discovered, but are yet to find a match. So the wait for answers begins again for the Sindall family. Their pain is everlasting.
Yeah.
And you pop there now. I am joined now by Emma Torr, who is a barrister working for the Charity Appeal, which takes on wrongful conviction cases and works with lawyers and specialist investigators to bring them to the Court of Appeal. Emma Torr, an extraordinary case. As his family said today, in a way, there are no winners. He spent almost 4 decades in prison, and Diane Sindall's family have to come to terms with the fact that the man who killed her is still free.
Yes, Jackie. Good evening. Thank you for having me on this evening. Yes, it's a truly appalling case. Peter Sullivan, as we've heard, waited almost 38 years to clear his name. And it's simply not right that people should have to wait this long in order to obtain justice.
Yeah, I wonder why it has had to wait that long. I mean, how long have they had this DNA? Because, you know, DNA, I know it's not been around 40 years, but it's been around quite a few years. Why has it took all this time?
We know that his case was at the CCRC back in 2008 and again at the Court of Appeal in 2021, but on neither occasion.
So from 2008, it's taken all this time.
And were they able to identify his case as a miscarriage of justice? But he'd always maintained innocence. He'd always said that he was forced into a confession by the police. And there's serious questions to be asked, I think, Jackie, about why it took so long for him to finally become free.
I mean, as you rightly say, he first applied to the CCRC, the Criminal Cases Review Commission, in 2008. But it was accepted today by judges in court that the technology for testing DNA was just not well enough developed at that stage. Do you think there was still more that could have been done at that point, or was he just unlucky that the technology wasn't there at that point?
Well, DNA can be quite a complex issue, and I don't know the precise details in Peter's case, but there are similarities here between Peter Sullivan's case and that of Andrew Malkinson and also Victor Neelan, and where DNA exists, but the potential for testing isn't available, then perhaps what's needed is some sort of review by the Criminal Cases Review Commission or by the police, so that when new technology becomes available, testing can be done so that people like Peter and Andy don't spend more years in prison than they actually should do, when obviously they won't.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because, it just seems obvious that shouldn't have taken from 2008 till now, nearly 20 years, if you take it from when it was first flagged up, to get this man released. But it's so difficult. If maybe, as they're saying, the DNA wasn't advanced enough, the DNA testing wasn't advanced enough now. Thing is, it's every month probably brings an advance in DNA testing, certainly every year. So there's a lot of criminals out there that need to be worried, don't they? Because so not only for miscarriages of justice that DNA has changed things for the better, but also, of course, for cold cases that are getting solved now because of DNA.
Guilty of the crime in the first place.
So, as we say, the technology has developed significantly since then. Do you think there may be other cases like Peter Sullivan's where people are in jail wrongly?
That's a really good question, Jackie. And I think we have to be alive to the fact that there could be other miscarriages of justice. We know that Peter's case isn't the first. I've mentioned that of Victor Neelan and Andrew Malkinson. And we know that the CCRC turned down those cases previously, in Andrew Malkinson's case, saying that forensic testing was speculative and refused to do that extra work. And they're now undertaking a forensic review of murder and attempted murder and rape cases. So there certainly is a potential, Jackie, for other cases like this to be brought into the courts.
I wonder if DNA testing has stopped because, obviously they're probably quite overwhelmed with people or they would have been be overwhelmed with people saying, "Oh, look, I've been wrongly convicted." Just something that just struck me. I wonder if some of those claims of wrongful conviction might have been dropped now because of DNA, like the opposite of it. So people claiming to be innocent, but now realizing that because of DNA testing, maybe before the evidence against them was circumstantial, but they are, what I'm trying to say is maybe people who are guilty, but it was a bit touch and go with their trial, whether they would get found guilty or not, because it was pre-DNA days. So maybe, these people out there that have been protesting their innocence for so long, but now because of DNA and knowing that if it did come to a DNA test, it would be proven irrevocably that they were guilty if they've given up their case. Do you see what I mean? Because, if you got, say you were arrested and charged 40 years ago for murder and RAPE, and then when it came to conviction, you were convicted, but maybe it was, a lot of circumstantial evidence and blah, 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 blah. So you start off an appeal, you're saying to all your family, no, it wasn't me. I'm going to take it to the court of wrongful conviction. But really, you knew it was you. Now, are those people going to be a bit quieter because of DNA? Because they'll know. So it'll get to a point where you think, oh, better not push this too far. Because if this goes to a retrial, now that this DNA evidence, it could be like worse for me, because then I've got to say to my family, yeah, actually, I did do it. Because do you understand what I'm saying? I wonder if the opposite is happening as well, that people who've previously claimed to be innocent are now keeping a bit stum about it because they know that the DNA will prove that they're not innocent. So as well as DNA being a good thing, like for people like Peter, to prove that he was innocent, although it's so much, it's very late. And then I think new cases, maybe especially RAPE cases and murder cases, because there's normally it's unusual for there not to be DNA unless somebody has gone prepared, with gloves or whatever. it makes you wonder if they're less likely to be wrongful convictions now.
Which is a worry, because there are plenty of people we know who are maintaining innocence in prison, but they're simply, because they maintain their innocence, are not eligible for parole. So that's another issue that's compounded here.
That's interesting. I didn't realise that. So if they don't admit their guilt, they don't get parole. So yeah, interesting.
Emma, we're going to have to leave it there for now, but thank you very much for talking to us this evening. Thank you.
Anyway, let me know what you think about it all. I mean, obviously, it's good for Peter that he's been found innocent, but of course, it's terrible for Diane's family as well. I mean, they won't want an innocent man to be in prison for the murder of their daughter. But don't forget, for all these years, they thought it was Peter. You know, this is the man that they've imagined that murdered their daughter. And now they're finding out that, in fact, it wasn't him. There was some mystery man that we don't know who it is. Having said that, the police have got a DNA profile. So somebody out there in Birkenhead, if he's still alive, as I say, will be panicking. I just want to show you a picture. Well, I don't think we've got a photo yet of Peter Sullivan as he is now. Of course, he's a lot older now. He's 39 years older than he was. But this is a drawing of him, bless. You know, he went into prison a young man. And he's coming out a much older man. But at least he's coming out, I suppose, isn't he? And in the meantime, the parents of Diane, they don't know. Again, they're back to square one. They don't know who killed their daughter. So it's a multi, I hope the police do find the person. So just imagine we've seen it before in cases. There'll be somebody sat out there, probably, maybe even watching that on the telly. Maybe someone's wife watching that on the TV. Oh, isn't that awful? And it happened just around the corner from where we live. Do you remember when it was on the news, that girl getting RAPD'd? And I remember when it was on Crime Watch, and the person that sat next to them, their husband of maybe 40 years or whatever, they're the guilty party. That is likely to be, that's not a stretch of the imagination. That's likely to be exactly what's going on somewhere in Birkenhead. Now, unless they've moved from Birkenhead, they could have moved anywhere in the country, could have deceased. But I think if that person, the real perpetrator, is still alive, they're likely to be married, children, probably grandchildren by now. All the things that poor Peter couldn't have, or Diane. So Peter and Diane, really, they've been sort of locked together, haven't they, in their lives being, Peter's had a life, but a prison life. Diane has had no life. Hopefully, she's having a better life on the other side. But, at the end of the day, she wanted this life. She was planning to get married. She was enjoying her job. She was another one that was a benefit to the community, it seems. These people, we need these nice people in society. We don't need the twonks. We need the nice people. And she was taken away. So two people that have had their lives taken away, at least Peter will get a little bit of it back. But I'm just wondering what's going to happen as time goes on. And, if you're watching from Birkenhead and you know anyone that or know anything about this case, please contact the police, because this perpetrator, you can't imagine that he will have only done this crime. It does happen. Sometimes people commit a crime like that and they never commit another crime. They just do it in a moment of madness when they're young. But often, more often probably, once they, to do a crime like that, that's, just pull some poor woman who's walking up the road that you don't even know off the street into sort of an alleyway, RAP them, kill them. You know, the more you sort of think about it, it's difficult to kill someone. It's not an easy thing, especially if you're not using a gun. I mean, with a gun, it's quite easy, isn't it? That's the problem in America, isn't it? It's too easy to kill someone with a gun. You're completely detached from what you're doing. But if you don't have a gun, you literally have to get up close to someone to kill them, you know, or really violent, like with a rock or, you know, something, or a knife. Very messy, very up close and personal. It's not an easy thing to do. Now, it's possible, of course, that Diane might have been just unlucky and come across someone who was a serial killer. Maybe someone who's already in prison. Oh, no, it can't be, because the DNA would come up, wouldn't it? The DNA would come up if it was somebody who was already in prison. I'm presuming that all prisoners, even if they were arrested years ago, now have to give a DNA sample. I'm presuming that. Would a prisoner who was arrested 30 years ago, maybe for a similar crime, have had to provide their DNA then? You know, before we really were into DNA testing? Or are all prisoners now, have they all been routinely screened? No, I don't know. But it's interesting, isn't it? Anyway, all we know is, wasn't the man who was found guilty of doing it. He's been exonerated by DNA. But whose DNA is it? Where is this perpetrator? Is he still alive? Is he married? Does he have children? Did he commit any other crimes? You know, this is what everybody wants to know the answer to now, and nobody more than Diane's family. And I would think Peter's family too, because although he has been exonerated, catching the real perpetrator will just sort of, you know, finish it off, won't it? So, okay, so I thought I'd let you know about that. Let me know, as always, what you think in comments. And I'll see you really soon in the next video. And until then, may your God, as always, go with you.